So last week I was chatting with this startup guy who was building a new tech app, surprise, surprise. And let me tell you, this conversation just perfectly encapsulated some of the biggest pitfalls of the tech industry that I think we have today, and why things like social media, dating apps, and other convenience-based things like food delivery services have become so detrimental to human connection. I just had to share this with you guys. I'm not going to get into the specifics because obviously this is his baby, this is his startup, and I won't even get into the specific industry, but an analogy that I feel like is apt here is, so imagine I'm in the conversation with this guy. I'm curious, so I'm asking him like, okay, tell me about this app. Tell me about what you want it to do. And he's describing to me this scenario. Okay, you're at a bar and there are a bunch of people there and there's so many people to talk to. Throughout the evening, how many people do you think you're gonna chance to talk to and potentially make a connection with? I said, I don't know, maybe 6 people. And he then was like, well, what if at this bar, while you're already out there in real life, socializing with all these different types of people, you had an app that essentially eliminates all of the inefficiencies of having to talk to random people at the bar, and instead it perfectly pairs you up with someone else at the bar who is exactly looking for what you're looking for. Essentially, it's a dating app that removes all of the inefficiencies of actually talking to people and meeting people. And at this point of the conversation, I was like, you are just simply barking up the wrong tree here. He was asking me to be an early adopter. And I was like, this is just so not the type of tech that I'm into. It was kind of comical to me because in something as simple as human interaction and meeting new people at a bar, isn't the inefficiency kind of the point of it all? The awkward first encounters or the meet cutes and those chance meeting random people. All of the unexpected moments, that's where the magic happens. But instead, in the tech industry, people continue to optimize life as if it's this productivity problem. More and more apps and services are pushing efficiency and convenience, but at what cost? Because here's the thing, I personally believe that convenience culture is stealing something huge from us. And a lot of us aren't even realizing it, and the tech industry sure isn't helping. By the way, my name's Kate, and I talk about all things tech and media literacy as someone who's worked on the backside of things at social media platforms and continues to work in the tech industry today. Let's unpack how tech is stripping away spontaneity and serendipity under the guise of making things easier. So as someone who has lived in San Francisco and been deeply entrenched in some of the different facets of the tech industry for a while, I think it's so funny how there's this obsession with efficiency and a broad problem of over-optimizing so much of life. It feels like so much of the recent popular tech apps or different software platforms are all built to remove friction from our lives. We've got things like dating apps that remove those kind of awkward first encounters or your, ability to be rejected in person. Things like ride sharing apps and Uber and Lyft are taking away that ability to bump into someone on the bus or have a casual chit chat or even get to know the layout of the city or town you live in. And then there are things like food and grocery delivery that remove the need for you to even leave your house in the first place to get something so basic as to eat. It's like engineers are stripping down the human experience to just being logistical problems that need to be solved. Instead of going to a bookstore and wandering the aisles and looking at the staff picks and maybe chatting with someone about what book they would recommend or something great that they've read recently, now you can turn to Amazon and get that perfect recommendation at the touch of a finger. And while sure, maybe the logistics were easier, technically it was more convenient, it took away the beauty of that experience of wandering in a bookstore. I think it's interesting how a lot of engineers and builders in the tech industry often want to solve problems and of course profit from building something to solve these problems that honestly maybe they were okay problems for humans to have in the first place. Like going back to that bar example of the guy that I met last week, I just kept countering to him. I was like, why is it a problem if I have to talk to 6 different people before maybe talking to the person that I actually am interested in meeting that night. Each one of those 6 little interactions you learn something from, and there's this beauty in just that human connection. Why are we stripping that down to just the most bare bones way about it? And the way that all of this is being built and has been built in recent years is causing humans to lose serendipity. Those unexpected moments and meaningful discoveries, those can be some of the best moments in life. And these moments in life can't be engineered. Maybe meeting a new friend by chance just because you push yourself outside the door to go to a random event, or discovering a new hobby that you like, or falling into a surprisingly deep conversation with a stranger on the bus. You can't engineer these really vital and beautiful human experiences. I think anyone who has been on a dating app before definitely can relate to this one, but there's just something so beautiful to meeting someone IRL versus having swiped through 1,000 different profiles, all the while trying to optimize your preferences and try and make sure you're meeting the perfect person on paper. Like, maybe the problem wasn't, how optimized your profile is. Maybe the problem is that you haven't been to the grocery store in a while, or you've been Ubering everywhere, so you're not on public transit to see the actual selection of people in your neighborhood who live around you. I love engineers. I'm just gonna say it. Like, I love engineers. The 2 men in my life who I have loved have both been engineers. But there is something about the mind of an engineer that is so different than some of the general public, let's say. I'm trying to figure out a tactful way to put this, but it's like there's this emphasis on problem solving and optimizing things that weren't necessarily problems in the first place. And I think a lot of this tech would have been better built from the get-go if the people who were building the apps perhaps had a social psychologist in the room as well, or honestly just feedback from an average Joe instead of building the product, pumping it out to the public, and then thinking about, oh, we'll figure out the later implications of this at a later date. I mean, the downstream implications. You know what I mean. The years down the line when this is messed up with the way that humans can connect with each other, then we'll figure out how to clean up our mess. And of course, at that point in time, we're gonna try and figure out another way to engineer it through technology. Serendipity and spontaneity are so important and matter so much to the human experience. Sharing unplanned experiences with people can lead to deeper social bonds and just honestly more joy, and fuels this happiness and connection with people around you. I mean, think about it in your own life and leave a comment if this resonates with you. But haven't some of the most memorable experiences of your life been unplanned or unexpected? I know this is 100% true in my life. One time, I'm just gonna give one example, but one time I was on a Hinge date, which is the least serendipitous, spontaneous thing you can possibly do. So I'm on this Hinge date, was essentially when you're on a Hinge date, it's let me interview you for the position of my boyfriend. And here's all of these check boxes, things I have to ask, whatever. It was a first date. So I'm on this date and it just feels inauthentic, unhuman, the way these first dates often feel. It felt like an interview. But the night was saved by the fact that there was this girl at the bar who saw that I was clearly struggling on a first date and like just not really having a good time. And it was a bar that had live music going, and she literally just came up to me and she was like, let's go dance. And so then we are on the dance floor, and the guy, I'm trying to like get him to enjoy it as well, but he's like really confused by the whole experience. The whole rest of the evening, I basically get taken under the wing of this very nice couple and like a bunch of their friends. And it's just like, thank goodness I got out the door by having that Hinge date, but the fun and memorable parts of it was the serendipity, was the fact that I ended up with all of these strangers dancing at a bar. Like that's the spice of life. It's never that structured, engineered thing, especially if it was built off of an app or like meeting someone on the internet. It's always that IRL, spontaneous, serendipitous turn of events. The more we optimize and try to control everything, the less satisfying our lived experience experiences become. Like for dating apps supposedly give you thousands of choices, but then the dating itself becomes less fun, less meaningful, and more exhausting. You have to build up a roster or have like a spreadsheet to save all of the details about all of the different people you're talking to at the same time. It sucks all the fun and joy out of it. The same thing with the bookstore. The joy of walking through and like smelling all the old books versus just picking the one book on Amazon that someone told you to recommend it to you. There becomes this paradox of choice. And back to the tech industry, I think there is such a danger at treating life like this user experience problem that needs to be solved, or like this UX design flaw that needs to be fixed. The tech industry, and I work in it, so I'm probably a part of the problem here, but the tech industry, it's full of people who are optimizing life like it's an algorithm, rather than something that is so messy and beautiful and human. The messiness of it is what makes it human. Engineers aren't thinking about, and I'm making generalizations here. Please don't hate me too much for making generalizations, but engineers often aren't thinking about the deeper human experiences and the downstream implications on that. They're just thinking about solving those problems, solving the convenience problems, or solving the inefficiencies of life. Just because something can be optimized doesn't necessarily mean it should be. All of these problems in our lives, like wanting to date or not wanting to go to the grocery store or wanting to get from point A to point B a little bit easier and more efficient, are these problems all really problems in the first place? I don't think that everything needs to be frictionless. Here's another example that I've been thinking about a lot in terms of educating future generations, but there has been a rise in AI, obviously, in a ton of different areas of our lives, but especially in terms of writing tools and being able to write essays for college kids, for example. Sure, these AI writing tools may perfect your grammar. They may be able to give you entire drafts of your essay. They may be able to help you craft entire paragraphs, or basically just take away the ability for you to need to write anything in the first place. But then there's going to be this huge problem where people don't know how to write. Our reliance on things like these AI tools have stripped away all of the creativity and the personal touches that has gone into writing traditionally. We have all of these tech solutions for things that are supposed to be problems. But I do think, and I think the fact that you've made it to this point in the video, you're probably aligned with me here. I think we're starting to see a movement of people who want to be more conscious about the type of tech and media they're consuming, people who want to place more value on in-person human connections again, people who want to think deeply and critically about the type of ways that society has become set up and how we are so dependent on technology now. One area we're really seeing an example of this is in the music industry. There has been a really big increase in things like vinyl sales, like old school records and cassette tapes, because I think we've gotten to a point where music has become so optimized on the streaming platforms and all the same type of music gets surfaced, or AI has you perfectly pinned to your little typical preferences of what you listen to, that people are actually pushing against that and rebelling and are going back to the more tactile, physical ways that you can listen to music, just to bring back that organic sense of joy of buying a record, having it physically, and then listening to that record all the way through. I think this is just one example of many and ways that people are slowly pushing back against this. I know I definitely fall into it. I got my record player, I got my film photography. I think that there is a desire for a more analog culture. And let me know the little ways that you're kind of pushing back against this as well. Convenience culture has reshaped the way that all of us navigate and move through the world, removing friction, but also taking away and eliminating the unexpected joys that come with spontaneity. There are a lot of engineers and tech entrepreneurs out there that are solving for efficiencies without actually thinking about human nature. And I mean, that guy that I talked to last week was a perfect example. It felt like we were talking in a different language, you guys. And in making everything so seamless and so optimized, we're losing something essential, that randomness, that discovery, and those weird, wonderful moments that make life exciting. I think all we can really do to push back is just try and start to reject this hyper efficiency in different areas of our lives. Like, instead of using Instacart, go to the grocery store. Instead of using Uber, maybe try and budget a little bit more time so you can take the metro or subway there. Also learning to embrace that boredom. I've talked about that at length in another video, but embracing boredom and serendipity. It's the unpredictable things coming out of putting your phone down or taking the long way home and taking the more scenic route, talking to a random stranger. Those are the fun little ways that we can start to feel more in touch with ourselves again and more driven to human connection. I think also embracing things without needing an agenda. I have this trouble with a lot of friends who are in this industry. Sometimes it can feel like, oh, let me put a calendar invite for 2 Saturdays from now and we're gonna have fun. It's like, no, let's just experience. Let's just do something spontaneous. Let's see where things go instead of having to hyper optimize this experience. I think some of the best moments in life come from the unexpected, the unplanned, and the inefficient. Let's try to not let technology that's been built by people who aren't taking into consideration human nature, let's not let this tech take that away from us. Thank you so much to Amelia and Kareen for subscribing to my newsletter. You can check that out down below. I talk about themes like this on there every 2 weeks and appreciate you all tuning in today. We'll talk again soon. Bye.